At first, we got to see Rishe being scared of ghosts, and now we would see them by the ocean where Rishe would prank Arnold and they would have a whole fight. The story continues with Rao pretending to be the prince, testing and teasing Rishe. He knew that she was the one who fought him in the alley, but he wanted to make sure it was not her body double or something. So he offered to kneel and kiss her hand, a classic move to estimate her sword skills. And just as Rishe is about to accept, Arnold joins them, wrapping his arm around her waist, saying, "You're an honored guest. It may just be a formal greeting, but there's no need for you to kneel." In response to that, Raoul narrowed his eyes, his smile widening. "I see, you're quite a devoted husband, Prince Arnold." Where in the world did that came from? Rishe thought. The comment had been sarcastic, obviously, but Arnold did not even flinch. He just gazed at Raoul and said, "It's only natural for a husband to mind his wife." Raoul continued to throw sarcastic comments until Rishi's head swung between the two of them, trying to end their conversation. Then Arnold broke the eye contact with him as if he'd lost interest. She had no idea as to either of their motives, but Rishe was on Galkin's side at the moment. And even if she wasn't going to tell Arnold that Curtis was fake, she still planned on being cautious around him. When she looked up, she was met with Arnold's blue eyes. Her breath caught a little at the closeness of his ever so handsome face. He bent down, face neutral, and whispered, "Sorry, but please entertain the princess." His husky voice and breath tickled her ears, making her jump. After that, they parted ways and Rishe took Princess Harriet to the merchant who was the head of Arya Trading Company. They showed her so many great things, but Harriet just didn't think that she could buy any of them, even though her fiancé had given her Galkin's currency to spend while she was there. Then there was her head lady in waiting, who just kept on putting her down with her words. I honestly felt so bad for the princess. Her whole self-esteem is non-existent. She covers her eyes with her hairs, thinking that people hate her face because of them. And she says things like, "I may be human, but I'm absolutely in no position to choose to dress myself." I mean, she even wishes that she could just be a doll. And the worst part was that Rishe could relate to her in some way, and she wanted to show her that being a woman isn't just about being pretty for their partners, becoming a queen, and giving the kingdom an heir. She asked her to meet up again, and after changing her clothes, Rishe took the princess on a horse run. Even though back in that period, women didn't really ride horses alone, but Rishe had lived a lot of lives, so I don't think the rules and regulations bothered her. Harriet too was enjoying herself, until the head lady in waiting calling for them. Rishe had dodged her before, but now they were coming after them. Rishe asked the princess to hold tight, saying that she would shake them off, and she raised the horse even more. They finally reached the top part of the hill, both of them enjoying the fresh air. Seeing how brave Rishe was, Harriet mumbles that she wished she could just be like her. So in return, Rishe asked the princess where she wanted to go and what she wanted to do. The princess didn't get her question, so she explained, "For instance, I want to go to places with beautiful things, a field full of sunflowers or a forest with a carpet of autumn leaves." Rishi's eyes crinkled as she remembers things she had seen in her travel. "There's certain someone I want to show those things to." That certain someone was obviously Arnold. She wanted to see his reaction. In short, she wanted to travel the world all over again, but this time with him. Our little princess Harriet, on the other hand, didn't have any answer, so she rushed back to her maid in a flustered state. Right after that, Raoul spawned out of nowhere to mess with Rishe again. As I said before, he's a very bipolar character in a way. He compliments her without sincerity and has no sense of personal space. Even now, he slides from the bench and lands closer to Rishe, saying that he wants her to be his wife instead of Prince Arnold. So none of those things works on Rishe, because she had known him before and was kind of used to his sweet talks and manipulative personality. He even complains about how her expression doesn't change at all, not even when he gets closer to her. Yet she turned red in a flash when the crown prince held her or called her name. For now, she didn't answer this question, but later there's this bonus scene where he asks Rishe if she likes Arnold's face, because of the same reason to why she only reacts to him. He says, "I'm not bad looking myself, am I? But you don't react to me at all, so maybe Prince Arnold is just special to you." And the conclusion he reached is that I must prefer His Highness's face. Rishe confirms and gets lost in her thoughts. While she is still there, she hears someone approach the room. The footsteps were familiar to Rishe, but she was distracted. Taking this as an opportunity, Raoul smirked, pressing the question, "Come on, tell me why I can hit on you and you're unfazed, but that guy says your name and you don't know what to do with yourself." That's because Rishi began but frowned again. Then she decided that she would never be able to get away from this hunter, so she marched to the door and pulled it open to reveal a surprised Arnold standing there. Without saying anything to Arnold, she grabbed his hand and declared to Raoul, "I like his face and his voice and the color of his eyes and the shape of his hands and everything else." After her declaration, there was silence. But that didn't stop her from pleading her case to Raoul. She pulled Arnold's hand behind her and continued, "Prince Arnold's face is the handsomest in the world, of course, but it's not just his face. If he looked at you with those eyes and called your name with his voice, then anyone would." She gets interrupted by him calling her name. She looked up at him and jumped. What she just described was happening. Her gaze fell on her hand where she was still gripping his wrist. Slowly raising her gaze, she found that the most beautiful face in her seventh life was giving her a stern glare. It was like all her blood had rushed to her cheeks. What in the world am I saying right in front of him? She thought and dropped his hand like it was on fire, and then dipped low in a clumsy courtesy. "I'm sorry, Prince Arnold. Please pay no mind to what I've just said. Forget it immediately." Then she lifted her head in Arnold's direction and blunted, I'm going to request some tea for our meeting." Before Arnold could reply, she fled the room and raced down the hall. And behind her, Arnold targeted Raoul, asking what he'd said to her in his icy voice and dangerous gaze. Raoul said, "You don't need to worry. I can't win against your wife, so you can lower your guard." He kept his tone light, but Arnold's expression didn't soften. In the end, Raoul still didn't explain himself to him and just smiled and walked away. One of the reasons why I liked Raoul's character is his fearlessness and the way he teases people. Though he does have some moments that could be considered uncomfortable to some people, especially his lack of understanding the personal space. Anyways, back to the story. So Raoul left Rishi alone and she got back to the castle because it was about to rain. Now, as Rishi listened to the pleasant sound of droplets hitting the windows, she received word that Arnold had returned from the town. She went to welcome him, but her eyes went wide when she met Arnold in the entry hall. He stood there soaky and soaking wet. "Are you okay?" Rishi sprinted toward him, hastily instructing the maid to bring some towels as she passed. Oliver appeared behind him, equally drenched and frustrated at his lord. "Goodness, there was no need to rush, was there? I suggested we wait out the rain, but you had to insist on soldiering through it, didn't you?" Oliver complains. "Hold your tongue, you didn't need to come with me." Arnold shot back. "Oh, but I did. Of course I understand your desire to return to the castle so quickly," he continues, and Arnold growls, asking him to shut up. He ran a hand through his bangs. The casual movement exposed his typically hidden forehead, and Rishi's breath caught up as she gazed at Arnold. He was puzzled over her careful examination. "What is it?" he asked. She felt compelled to respond. "It's just, even your forehead is as beautiful as a work of art, Your Highness," she blunted out. Before he could register and react, Rishi said, "Oh look, the towels are here," and picked up one of the towels, spreading it out. Then she stood on her tiptoes and dripped it over his head, drying his beautiful black hairs. Everyone present, Oliver included, watched her with their mouths open. Even the guards who had been reaching for towels of their own were frozen in shock. A moment later, Arnold's flat, muffled voice came from beneath the towel. He was calling her name, and when she responded, he said, "I can dry myself." Rishi blinked once, then twice, and then understood at last. She dropped the towel like a hot potato, her arms shooting into the air like white flags. With her arm raised in total surrender, she took 2 shaky steps back. Although the guards and maids didn't dare move a muscle, Oliver alone appeared to be holding back his laughter. I'm sorry, this was completely out of line," she said. "It's fine," Arnold replies. And Oliver joins in just then, thanking Rishi and asking her to take care of Arnold for him. At this point, Rishi just wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Forced by that feeling, Rishi grabbed Arnold's arm again and led him upstairs. "Just be normal, Rishi, for goodness sake," she told herself. And when she judged herself to be significantly calm, her maid handed her the tea she'd asked for, and she knocked on the door of the room she had tossed Arnold in, asking if he had changed his clothes yet. He called her in and she served him tea. He was sitting on the couch wearing a white t-shirt, reading over a document. He patted the space next to him with one hand, signaling for her to sit down. She hadn't thought anything of it before. She was the one who suggested that they would sit side by side in the first place. But now she wondered if they should have sat across from each other like before. Still, she didn't want it to go out of her way to refuse his offer and sit on another couch. So she took her place beside him and looked up. "Are you done with your inspection of the currency exchange?" she asked. asked, "For today, at least, I'll check a few more places tomorrow, and that'll be all of them. Any issue on your end?" he inquires, and she told him about Lady Harriet. Honestly, he didn't care a bit about that. Prince Arnold didn't even move when Lady Harriet fell flat on her face yesterday. Rishi thought about it as she watched Arnold flip through his documents. Then suddenly she asked, "Does your scar hurt?" He glanced at her in surprise for a moment, but turned away again. "Sometimes," he said after a pause, "when it rains." He conducted himself the same as ever, but on a closer inspection, she could tell that Arnold was favoring his left side. She didn't think that she would be able to tell if she didn't know about the scar on his neck. "How could you tell?" he asked. "I can sort of sense whenever you're in pain now," she replied honestly. It wasn't as if Rishi was monitoring Arnold's health every second or anything, but she had heard from the patients in her life as the apothecary about old wound aching when it rains. A proper treatment for such symptoms didn't exist though, so she said, "Shall I prepare some hot water? If you warm the area up with the towel, it might alleviate the pain somewhat." "You don't need to worry about that," he said. She began, but he reassures her softly. "It's a little better now, so I don't need anything else." She thought she hadn't done anything, so she didn't know what he meant by anything else. She knew that his scar might be his only weaknesses in his swordsmanship, and when she thinks about it, she remembers that in her previous life, Raoul got to know about it and make a plan to hit him there with the arrows. So as planned, all of Rishi's companions aimed their bows at Raoul's command. They shot poisonous arrows at Emperor Arnold of that time, but his sword has knocked every single attack aside. We're downwind. There is no way Emperor Arnold can hear our voices right now. So why do I have such a bad feeling about this? Rishi had thought back then. She felt a premonition stirring in her heart and looked through the monocular once more. Then she gasped. Arnold Haynes' blue eyes were staring right at her. She stuttered, immediately realizing that she wasn't just imagining it. Arnold Haynes had been looking at her. She called everyone to stop, and a buzz went through the group at Rishi's word. Depending on what Arnold Haynes did, they could soon be surrounded by enemy knights. Rishi held her breath and looked through the lens at the man. He smiled, the expression not reaching his dark eyes, and pressed his thumb to the left side of his chest, as if to say, "My heart is right here." He was urging Rishi into attacking him. I don't know why this scene was so cool. Alright, back to their current life. They were just chilling in their shared room, and the thoughts of ghost existence crossed Rishi's mind again, and noticing that, Arnold touched her hand, though he didn't say anything and just traced the edge of her sapphire ring. She knew exactly what he was thinking, but before she could confirm her thoughts, he said, "Rishi, the rain stopped," and proceeded to ask her if she will let him take her somewhere. Then he stood up, extending a hand to Rishi. "Do you have the time?" he asked. She was surprised by the proposal, but nodded and took Arnold's hand. Now comes the scene of them at the beach. Okay, so she wore a light summer dress with a hat to shade her from the sun, and she had a basket of drinks in one hand. "Hey, don't run in the sand, you'll fall." Arnold voiced his worry. "I'm sorry, but she couldn't stop her excitement despite Arnold's warning. "It's the beach," she said. Her eyes positively sparkled at the great expanse of water before them. After running out onto the sand, Rishi turned to face Arnold, who wasn't wearing his jacket, and excitedly asked, "Forgive my modesty, but do you mind if I remove my shoes?" He replied with, "Do what you want, just don't hurt yourself." Rishi set her basket down next to a rock and laid her head over top. Then she kicked off and felt the silky sand beneath her feet. Her dress danced in the wind. When she noticed the water was clean, she moved more toward the ocean until gentle waves lapped with her toes. She held up the edge of her dress and walked in a little deeper, saying, "The water surface is so bright," enthusiastically. Arnold, who was still standing on the beach, asked, "Is it that much fun?" "Of course it is," she responded to Arnold. "Isn't it fun just imagining what might have been on the bottom of the deep sea?" Rishi spun toward Arnold, splashing at the surface of the water. "Maybe there's sunken treasure there that some pirates robbed," she fantasized, but Arnold burst her bubble, saying that would be a pain in the neck. We'd have to figure out who the treasure belongs to and gather up all the potential claimants. "Ah, you and your realism," she said. Even so, Arnold went along with Rishi's odd little fantasy, and that really made her happy. "When I was a girl studying in my room, I desperately ate up any fragment of knowledge about the rest of the world from my textbooks." Her eyes were hooded as she recalled the memories. "I would read the word ocean and wonder what it was like. When I had to embroider flowers, I wonder what the real ones smelled like." Imagining those things kept me going. That's why I was so happy every time I finally experienced something I previously could only imagine. She was telling him about her childhood, and he was listening carefully. She had been to the ocean many times in all of her previous lives, but the the side of it was still fresh. Did you bring me to the beach because I said I wanted to go to the ocean? She asked, and he only replied with a, that's the part of it. She was even more happy that he'd remembered what she said before they departed the castle. Yet Prince Arnold is only watching. How does the ocean look through his eyes? She wonders. As he wore his usual neutral expression, she thought if he didn't seem moved by the gorgeous scenery in any way. That's not all. The way Arnold watched Rishe as she stood in the sea, it was as if she had nothing to do with him, like he had drawn a line between them, or he had decided that there was nothing between them at all. That made Rishe feel like she had come to the seaside all by herself. Prince Arnold, she shouted, reaching out to him. Arnold frowned, dubious. What's with the hand? He asked. Come here, Your Highness, she urges. His frown deepens, but it wasn't because the invitation displeased him. If anything, the source of displeasure came from the invitation being so unexpected. Making up her mind, Rishe declared, I'm making a request, so you must listen to it. As we know that when they got engaged, Arnold had said that he would grant any of her requests. Knowing that she was referencing this, Arnold sighed. Giving in, he bent over to remove his shoes. He neatly rolled over his pants and, still scowling, entered the sea. He sloshed through the water to get to Rishe, all the while looking down at his feet with a complicated expression on his face, as if walking directly on sand felt strange to him. When he reached her, she asked, What do you think? No comments, he replied. Well then, Your Highness. Standing next to him, Rishe dropped the edge of her skirt. She decided not to worry about it getting wet. Instead, she grasped Arnold by each wrist, saying, You can scold me all you want later, alright? Before his question of what are you doing melted into realization, Rishe tackled them both backward into the water. I mean, surely Arnold would have been able to maintain his balance had he just been concerned for himself, but our sweet prince tried to support his fiancée as well. So they both ended up tumbling into the ocean. There was a great spray of water. Rishe squeezed her eyes shut and held her breath as she endured the impact before Arnold pulled her back up. Now she sat in the ocean, which reached to her navel in this shallow area. Her dress floated all around her as though she were a jellyfish, and Arnold was drenched for the second time that day. There was no point in him drying his hairs and changing clothes after getting caught out in the rain earlier. He called her name and she excuses herself with, if it's too early to swim, why not get amused this way? And then grinned at the novelty of trapping Arnold. With his arms ringed around Rishi's waist, he squinted at her. You look awfully pleased with yourself, he said. And she replied with, I am. I'm quite satisfied after pranking you, Your Highness. I see. Arnold sighed and reached for Rishi's cheek. Very well, I'll take you up on the offer. Rishe couldn't believe her ears. Yes, she started this little prank war, but she didn't think that he'd take it seriously. Ignoring Rishi's flustered reaction, Arnold went in for the kill. Rishe protested, but the splash marked the beginning of a fierce battle. Arnold was merciless. Rishe did her best to fight back, but he was unbeatable. She was certain that if anyone else saw the scene, they would be left speechless. After the steady exchange of attack and counterattack in the shallow, they realized much time has passed. We really went all out messing around, huh? She said. I suppose we did. To be honest, I love seeing him like that, and what makes it even more interesting is that it didn't feel like it was far-stretched from his character. Plus, I'm reminded again that he's a new adult too, who probably never got to live his teenage years. So after their water battle, the two of them sat on the beach for a breather. Rishi's stamina was completely expended, but Arnold appeared ready for a few more rounds. However, there was a different sort of fatigue in his features, though perhaps from doing something new. Rishe reached for the basket she had left on the rock and took out the bottles. Have some tea, Your Highness. It's gotten pretty warm though, she said. Nevertheless, Arnold drank. Have your feeling on the ocean changed at all? She asked. I don't know, he said honestly. She laughed and his head turned in her direction. It's just you really thought about it, didn't you? I mean, you didn't say no, just that you don't know. Arnold's gaze softened. He tucked Rishi's hair behind her ear and plucked her head from its spot, covering her head. Since he was still being gentle with her, Rishe said, I will accept your scolding now, Your Highness. While she was prepared for anything, Arnold said, I won't punish you, and added, I retaliated plenty, we're even. She blinked, stumped by his response. You got too easy on me, she complains. Get used to it, he said. He made something not at all natural seem natural, but Rishe wasn't having it. "You need to scold me or I'll just get worse. If you're too nice to me, well," she covered her mouth, murmuring, "I'll get greedy." Arnold chuckled. The soft expression he wore made him look his age for once. Gazing at Rishi, he said, "I like that." He sounded so gentle when he said that it made Rishi's air felt hot. "Everything that you do is so strange. I can never predict what's coming next," he said sincerely, but she thought he was teasing her again, and wrinkled her nose in frustration. Arnold lowered his gaze to the sand and said, "Besides, there isn't all that much I can do for you. It should be fine to spoil you a little." She tilted her head to the side, saying that he had already granted so many of her requests. "That's because the thing you asked for are so trivial," he replied. She found that strange. "I feel like I've been making some extreme requests by my standards," she thought. Arnold had readied a whole detached palace for his hostage fiancée and even allowed her to use the corner of the garden as a field. Rishi had hired all her own maids, and she was allowed to freely trade with merchants. All of this was selfish enough, was it not? Well, apparently not to him. The question must have been written on her face because Arnold said, "There's something I must prioritize above all else." He looked out at the ocean. "If your requests go against that, then I can't grant them." Rishi had only accepted Arnold's proposal after asking if he would grant her anything she desired. At that time, Arnold had agreed to it as long as it was within his power. In other words, he had implied from the beginning that there were some requests that he could not grant. "Due to my position, there will probably be times when my duty to work and country interferes as well. But that's not all." Arnold fixes his blue eyes on Rishi. "Even if you tire of this engagement, I won't let you leave my side," he said. A dull ache grew at her heart. "Because of the reason you proposed to me?" she asked. He steadied her for a while and then replied, "That's right." Rishi's hand crept to her chest just over her heart. She hoped that he wouldn't notice. It was wrong of her to feel sad about this. It's not like I've told him my top priorities either. She hasn't told him that she doesn't want him to kill his father or that she doesn't want him to start that war. So in a way, she's hiding her greatest desire from him as well. So she can't fault him for hiding things from her. And yet her heart ached. Rishi had asked Arnold about the reason he chose her as his fiancée several times now, but she could no longer voice the question. Instead, she regarded Arnold from under her hat. "What do you want me to do once I'm your wife, Prince Arnold?" The question startled him. He smiled at Rishi like he found her the most captivating thing in the whole world. "You've changed the question, I see." "I know you won't answer the normal one," she said. It was the truth, but it felt like a lie. Arnold's answer came easy. "What do I want you to do? That's simple. It's idle around the castle and be utterly useless, isn't it?" He was referring to what Rishi had said after he proposed to her. "That's not what you want, that's what I want," she exclaimed. "Still, it's hardly possible for you," he said. "What do you mean it's not possible? I absolutely plan to win my life of indolence after this, you hear me?" She was determined. "Why must you win it? You're not suited to indolence anyways," he said playfully. What does he mean by that? Rishi thought. Then Arnold questioned, "Why did you ask that in the first place?" The reason for her question was related to both economical and political aspect of this story. To put it simply, for the political part, she asked Arnold about Febrania, a country involved in political marriage of Lady Harriet. Arnold explained that Febrania was important diplomatically, but Galkian had bigger priorities. Rishi listened, reflecting on how marriage often felt like a duty in her past lives, but things felt different with Arnold, even if she didn't fully understand why. Now for the economical part of the story, Rishi handed Arnold a report about gold and silver prices in different countries. She had gathered this information because she suspected Arnold was planning to remake Galkian's currency. Arnold quickly figured out her intentions and admitted that she was in fact right. He explained that Galkian's gold and silver supply was stable, but other countries were running low because a key region, Koyol's, had fewer resources now. This shortage would cause serious problem as gold and silver coins were the basis of many economies. Arnold's plan was to reduce the amount of gold and silver in Galkian's coins so they could use less metal. The extra metal could be then sold to other countries to stabilize prices and keep trade running smoothly. Rishi was impressed by how smart Arnold was and how his ideas were similar to hers as a merchant. He believed in helping others to ensure Galkian's own success. But deep down, she was worried. She knew that in the future, Arnold would start a huge war, which would make the economical problem even worse. Even though she had been trying to change the future with her knowledge, it felt like she wasn't making enough of a difference. As they talked, the wind blew Rishi's hat away. Raoul, who just happened to be at the beach, was the one who picked it up and approached them. him, flying his way in. But as he held out his hand to return it, Rishe hesitated because she didn't understand his goals yet. While this went through her head, a hand shot out from her side. It was Arnold. He stood next to her and took the hat instead, saying, "Let me express my thanks to you on my wife's part." She looked between Arnold and Raul. "Thank you both." However, neither man was looking at her. I think that's enough for this video. They will actually have a civil talk here that I will surely add in the next video, hopefully soon. Forgive me for being so late. Thank you for listening to me. Take care of yourself and goodbye.
You'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you, but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change.